Any changes to the agenda?
There is one change to the agenda. I did not get the April 28th minutes completed. I was hoping to get them done today, but I didn't, so
Okay.
we will defer that, take that off the agenda.
Okay. So approval of the recommendation to make approval of the agenda minus the April 28th minutes.
So moved.
Anyone want a second?
I'll second. Oh, go ahead.
Okay. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Right. Public comments. Looks like there's nobody online. Announcements, no announcements? And then we'll skip over the approval of the minutes. No public hearings. On to
Right.
general business. So the first one is the 2050 comprehensive plan update.
Yeah. If everybody could just make sure their mics are turned on, because it's, I think we can just keep them on at this meeting. That would be helpful if you have questions throughout. As many of you know, we are required to update our comprehensive plan every 10 years, and we're coming on that cycle now. And I'm just going to give a little presentation on it. We gave the same presentation to the city council in a workshop session before their last city council meeting, just to get them warmed up to the whole topic and what that means for the city of Elko New Market. So I'm just going to go ahead and share a PowerPoint that I put together. Sure. Okay. So just a little about what is a comprehensive plan. I can't remember, I think Melissa was here through the last comprehensive plan, but definitely Ben, since you were not part of our last comprehensive plan, I want to just make sure, just review some really basic things. A comprehensive plan is just a document that describes a community's vision of itself and what it wants to be and where it wants to go, and it's really a compilation of policy statements, value statements, goals, maps, which guide the future development of the city. And the purpose, again, is to guide development, document our goals for the public, serve as a communication device, and provide a legal basis for the ordinances that we adopt. So the ordinances, or the comp plan, informs the ordinances that we adopt. Minnesota statutes gives cities the authority to plan and comprehensive plan and zone. First through Minnesota statute chapter 462, which was established in 1965, which grants cities throughout the entire state the authority to plan and zone their cities. So that's kind of the early inception of zoning in Minnesota. Most in the metro area were kind of or in Scott County was the early 70s when zoning was implemented. And then a little bit later, through the Metropolitan Land Planning Act, Minnesota Statute 473 established the Metropolitan Council in 1967 to coordinate planning and development throughout the Twin Cities area. And this requires metro areas, that's the statute that requires metro area cities to adopt a plan every 10 years. So if you're outstate, you don't even have to have a plan. If you're outstate, you could adopt a plan every 20 years or every 5 years, but metro area cities are required to at least every 10 years so that we are consistent with regional goals and policies. The city's current comprehensive plan was adopted in 2021. Since that time, there's been 4 amendments, mostly just applicant asking to re-guide a piece of property's guided land use from, commercial to residential or something along that line. Most of them were considered minor amendments. The most serious amendment was the RNF properties that looked at some amendments around the Elko Speedway to allow for some mixed-use housing in that area near the post office. Our plan has multiple chapters. The plan, the 2040 plan that's currently in place was originally started with a consultant called NAC, Northwest Associated Consultants. There was another planner, Bob Kermis, that used to work with the city before the city had staff. And in approximately it was started in approximately 2015, but city staff kind of took the process over about midway through the process. Then our engineering company, Bolton and Mank, was hired to write the utility chapters, which are the water chapter, sanitary sewer, and surface water chapters. And then there's also a transportation plan. That was a team effort between city staff and Bolton and Mank. Prior to the current 2040 plan, there have been a number of comprehensive planning documents adopted by the cities, both prior to the merger and after the merger. I think it's really fascinating to look back at a plan from 1972 for the city of Elko, and it sounds like a long time ago, but I think it's interesting to see what their visions were for their city. So these are just some screenshots of some either comprehensive plans or small area studies. Kind of in the late 90s and early 2000s, there was exponential growth occurring in this area of the county, and the county was working with Newmarket Township, the city of Elko, and the city of Newmarket to develop this joint plan because both cities were so small. Again, I think the total population of the two cities was 800 before the merger, so it gives you an idea of how small the cities were. So the county was really assisting them with that process, and you can see in 96, the cities did a joint comprehensive plan. 2005 is when Scott County helped them with this coordinated plan, and then the Great Recession hit, and everything came to a screeching halt here and didn't recover until pretty recently. Even when I started, the city council was like begging for development, and why don't we have any development? And because it was starting in other cities, but it just wasn't starting here yet. It took us longer to recover, but here we are. So again, why update the comprehensive plan? Minnesota Statute 473 mandates local government units within the 7-county metro area review and update their comprehensive plans, their fiscal devices, so our capital improvement plans, and official controls at least once every 10 years. And the decennial review ensures that our local planning remains consistent with Met Council system plans. And on February 12th, 2025, the Metropolitan Council updated their regional plans, and they published a document called Imagine 2050. And that document lays out their new vision for the region. And then the city has been served notice of a requirement to submit an amended plan by December 31st, 2028. So consistency with their plan. The city's comprehensive plan content is set by state statute and the Metropolitan Council. They lay out the minimum requirements for our plan. The plan needs to conform with their plan. And the Imagine 2050 is a regional development guide that sets policy foundations for counties, cities, townships throughout the 7-county metro. So it's not only cities, it also applies to counties and townships if the townships do their own zoning. In Scott County, the county handles the zoning for all of the townships. And Imagine 2050 sets policy on land use, housing, transportation, water resources, and regional parks and trails. And again, I keep repeating this, but our plan must be compatible with their plan and also the plans of our adjacent jurisdictions. So like Newmarket, we don't want Newmarket Township to be planning a big industrial park, in an area where we have a plan for residential, so we need to work together. Just a little reminder, an update on what the Metropolitan Council is. It's a regional policymaking body, planning agency, and provider of services in the seven-county Twin Cities metro area. They were established in 1967. Their originally, they were to operate the transit system in the metro area, and they do operate Metro Transit bus and rail systems, Metro Mobility, and Transit Link. And as far as environmental services, they do collect and treat 90% of the region's wastewater. And that service started in 1969. So prior to 1969, all larger cities, Minneapolis, St. Paul, Shakopee, they were all handling their own wastewater. And I understand it wasn't always going well. So they decided to form that regional Environmental Services Division. Parks, they oversee many regional parks and trails in the metro. And the parks component was established in 1974. And then planning, which establishes long-range regional plans for transportation, water resources, aviation, and local comprehensive plans. Again, that was largely established in 1976 under the Metro Land Planning Act. And the Metropolitan Council took over administering federal housing assistance when the federal HUD Section 8 program began in 1974. The Met Council is made up of 16 members representing geographic districts that are shown on this map, and also a chair, so there's 17, all of whom are appointed by the governor and confirmed by the Minnesota Senate. They all serve 4-year terms, and their terms generally coincide with the governor's terms. So all terms will expire on January 4th, 2027, when the governor's term expires. And the city of Elko New Market is represented by Deb Barber of Shakopee, and she's got the largest geographic district shown on the map. She covers all of Scott and Carver County. Again, when we review their policy plans, when we say water, that applies to potable water, sanitary sewer, and storm sewer. So from their system statements that they've adopted in Imagine 2050, they or after adoption of their policy plan, the Met Council provides system statements for each community. It's special document specifically for each community. A system statement it's customized, issued by the Met Council to local units of government. It outlines how their updated policies affect our community. It's local comp plan, and it acts as a guide for our 10-year plan update. After the city is issued this document, we have 3 years under state statute to complete our plan. And we have received this system statement document for Elko New Markets. So the first item outlined in this system statement that they've provided us is related to population, household, and employment. And the Met Council uses forecasts to plan for regional growth, regional systems, and communities must base their planning work on the individual forecasts established by the Metropolitan Council. So you can see here our forecasts for 2040 and 2050 have to be clearly identified throughout our plan. We have to figure out how to plan for that many houses and that many people. Whether they come or not, we still have to demonstrate that we can. So our most recent population estimate was published last year, but they're always a year behind. So April 1st, 2024, they estimated our population to be 5,250 and with 1,672 households. And by 2030, they estimate will be around 6,200, up to 8,200 in 2040, and 10,500 in 2050. So usually they've been a little aggressive. We usually haven't hit those numbers, but I think we'll get closer this time. They did kind of downgrade the numbers a little bit from the last projections, and since we are seeing more residential growth and different kinds of builders in the community, I think that we will get closer to hitting some of these numbers. The second item outlined in the city's system statement is related to housing, and it identifies the city's share of the regional affordable housing unit forecasts. So their housing policy provides, again, guidance on just regional housing needs and challenges, and it provides a framework for supporting safe, affordable, dignified housing. The housing policy plan objectives are fair housing, geographic choice, that not all the low-income housing has to be in one community in St. Louis Park, or, that we all have a share responsibility in sharing that. That people be provided the options to own or rent, just stable housing, quality housing, cultural connections and well-being, housing equity, and environmental justice. So those are things that we'll have to try to identify in our plan. Cities and townships must include a chapter on housing and implementation program to address the existing and projected housing needs. So overall, the total metro area, the forecasted affordable housing need is 39,700 units. And they have identified Elko New Market must provide an opportunity for 399 affordable housing units in our next plan. And this is probably an area, honestly, that Melissa knows a lot more about than I do. She could probably talk about it backwards and forwards, but we're trying to target, or we need to target people within certain income levels. So when they're saying that we have to provide or demonstrate that we can provide opportunity for 236 housing units for people earning 30% of the area median income or below, what that means is a family earning $39,450. So I've just, on the bottom of this slide, I just try to include what some of those categories mean. 50% AMI is $65,750. And usually this can be accomplished by identifying areas for multifamily or high-density housing. So if you have enough acreage available for high-density housing that could accommodate up to 400 housing units, that usually passes. The third item outlined in our system statements that we were given is a new policy related to climate. And the state legislature amended the Land Planning Act in 2023 to include requirements that local comprehensive plans address climate mitigation and adaptation. And the big focus is on reducing greenhouse gas emissions. And there's a much greater push for multimodal and trails and bike lanes and things like that. The next item in the system statements is related to community designations. The Met Council uses community designations to guide regional growth and development. And the designations basically group jurisdictions with similar characteristics for the application of regional policies. Community designations guide regional growth and development, and they establish land use expectations. So if you're cities like in the core metro, you're going to have a different designation and have different standards than more rural communities, detached rural communities such as us. We all have a different set of standards. We're identified as a rural center community. Rural centers serve as, hypothetically, serve as vital commercial, employment, and residential hubs for surrounding rural and agricultural areas. Now, even though that might not be totally true in our case, like we're not currently a vital commercial or employment hub, but that is the goal, and we will hopefully serve the agricultural area, the rural properties around the city. This is a map that shows those community designations, and you can see they're kind of color-coded as you move out from the core. So other cities that have a similar designation to us include Jordan, Belle Plaine, Norwood Young America, Cologne, Mayer, Watertown, New Germany. So you can see the similarities between our towns, and I think that makes sense. And I was glad to see that we're still considered a rural center as opposed to changing us to a different designation. And there's some areas around the city. So Newmarket Township has guided to two different classifications, diversified rural and rural residential. There's also the transportation policy plan informs the city's transportation plan, and we must include the following. We must address the following: highways, transit, bicycle, pedestrian, freight, aviation, travel demand management, and greenhouse gas emissions. Our water policy plan, again, must address wastewater flows and forecasts based on those population estimates that we were given. And the city must decide staging areas, or that's what we've been told so far. So most cities like Lakeville, for instance, they have this growth area around their city, but they've had to identify that we think this area can grow in the next 5 years, and this area can grow in the 5 to 10 years, and they set out staging areas, and we haven't been required to do that previously, and I hope that we can get around doing that, because I think it's only my personal opinion that when you start to say, well, this area can develop first, that's going to drive up property values there. Whether maybe those property owners don't even want to sell. I just think everything around the city should be treated equally. If services can be provided to it, and there's a willing seller that is at the stage in their life that they are ready to sell their property, that we service it. I think the staging just sets the stage for inflated property values. But we might have to do that. We do still have a number of on-site septic systems, homes in the community that aren't on city sewer. We just have to identify those in our plan, and we do have some plan for getting rid of those. Surface water, we are in both the Scott Watershed Management Organization and the Vermilion River Watershed Joint Powers Organization, and those two organizations have to approve our plan. Our plan has to be consistent with their plan. We do know that in the next planning cycle, I think we'll have to be a little bit more strict in terms of stormwater management, because Scott County, or the Scott WMO, is currently a little stricter in their standards than the city is currently enforcing. So we may see some changes there. Also, just to note, we are the headways of the Vermilion River, just north of town, And the Vermilion River is listed as a priority water or an impaired water by the DNR. And then water supply, so that's our drinking water. I will have to, a chapter on that. The DNR approves local water supply plans, and we've recently updated ours when we went through the Niagara project, so it's pretty up to date. But we'll want to kind of expand on this chapter a little bit. On the last time we did the plan, the direction from the city council was we're going to do it on a budget, and it's basically the 2030 plan hadn't been that long since the 2030 plan was adopted. The city put a lot of money into that plan. Direction from council for the 2040 plan was, bare bones, just do the minimums you have to do to get through the Met Council, but we may do a little more this time around on these utility components. And we'll be contracting with Bolton and Mank. These are very expensive to update, and, it's a mandate from the state. We don't have a choice. Talking with Bolton and Mank today, high-level numbers of completing these 3 chapters is probably $250,000, and that is significant for a small city like us, especially to absorb in 1 year. There's regional parks and trails. The policy plan identifies a regional trail corridor running east-west through our community along, basically along the County Road 2 corridor, but doesn't have to be along County Road 2. But so this regional trail corridor that's in the Met Council's planning documents would run all the way basically from Dakota County over to kind of the Henderson area. Eventually, could be 100 years from now, but so our plan will need to incorporate that trail in it, but the park plan, our park chapter of our comp plan, will primarily just address our local park needs. Land use. As a rural center, we will be required, again, this hasn't changed, to demonstrate that we can develop, or will be developing residential at a minimum 3 units per acre. Per net acre. We must guide sufficient land at a minimum density of 10 units per acre to meet our affordable housing allocation. And then within the MUSA, the city needs to allow for more than 1 housing type in land use categories with residential uses. So this is a new requirement, and I'm not sure what that means. So in our single-family zones, does that mean we have to allow for a duplex as well? So it very specifically states that we need to allow for more than 1 housing type in any resident land use category that has residential uses. What I don't know is we already allow accessory dwelling units, so maybe that meets the criteria, but I haven't met with them yet to figure that out. So maybe we're already good with it, but there's a possibility that we might have to allow 2 family dwellings in our low density zones, our land use areas.
Didn't we just do that with Pete's Hill and Sullivan's over, or
We did through PUD,
Oh.
but they're saying it has to be, or we did it on Pete's Hill through planned unit development zoning, but they're saying it has to be a permitted use. And then we may also have to, it's looking like we will have to enter into a master orderly annexation agreement with Newmarket Township. So we plan for this area outside of the city limits, and they're telling us we have to enter into an agreement with the township on the entire area that allows us to annex it, or the terms under which we can annex it without their saying. In most communities, well, in fact, what I've learned is we are the only community in the entire metro area that wasn't required to do this in our last plan. Negotiating these agreements with the township, it can be really difficult and contentious because they're kind of giving up all of their rights in this area to allow the city to annex it at any time they want. So it's, I don't know, we've been doing a good job just negotiating them one by one, and every property is unique and has different characteristics, and the township may have concerns. You know, if there's a property that's adjacent to a township road, they may have different concerns than a property that's not. So I'm fighting back pretty hard on this, and I'm not sure if we'll, where this is going, but this could be really time-consuming part of the process if we have to do that. And this would be something that would be done through administration. I'll probably tax Tom Terry with doing the meetings and negotiation on that, if it comes out. But so our city attorney's telling me you're probably going to have to do it, and but I think I'm maybe making a little headway. Last week I had a few meetings with the Met Council on it. So this map here depicts the planning area used for the 2040 comp plan. So the areas that are inside the city limits are shown in gray, and the areas that are outside the city limits but within our plan 2040 growth boundary are shown in blue. The total shaded areas were established. They're the areas established where growth is reasonably expected to occur and where utilities are planned for within the 2040 planning cycle. And the 2040 growth area was nearly the same as for the 2030 comp plan. So there was hardly any change, maybe a tiny.
You got the Sullivan property, right? They're not highlighted right now. I mean,
Yeah.
it's not gray.
Yeah, that's in the city now, but the Sullivan property was in the planned growth area.
Yeah.
But I think this time around, we'll want to do a more detailed evaluation of what might realistically be developed, pull some back, add others. Some, you know, for instance, the area along County Road 91 and north of 86, where there's a whole bunch of 10-acre parcels where really big homes have just been built. You know, we're not going to be developing that on city services probably for more than 50 years. So I don't know that we need to keep showing that area in our plan any longer, but just generally speaking, I think we'll want to take a closer look at these and work and really sit down with our engineers to say, where can we really extend sewer and water? You know, where is it close? What properties do you really think we can service?
Like that big square is.
And then rural center communities such as, Elko New Market must identify areas that will accommodate post-2050 growth forecasts and implement strategies to preserve the areas for future municipal growth. So as part of the city's 2030 comp plan, this boundary line around the city that's shown in tan here, which delineates what is thought to be this ultimate service boundary that, you know, it could be 100 or more years out. But this area is what we believe could be ultimately served by municipal utilities, or that big pipe that serves us that comes down from Lakeville. So many factors were considered in determining this physical constraint, where physical constraints would make it difficult or cost prohibitive. Ultimately, a long-term public utility service area was determined, which is shown in tan on this map. there's always this term thrown out that, Elko New Market could be a town of 70,000 people someday, and, right now we know that most of our community doesn't want to be a town of 70,000 people, but that's kind of what this depicts, and I don't think it's happening anytime soon, but, so it's kind of balancing that, what we can be someday, or what we need to plan for someday, versus kind of keeping this small town culture, and that's just the balancing act that the planning commission and council will have to work with. I actually threw a line on here, and then I threw it in the wrong location. I was trying to depict where the county line was with between Scott County and Rice County, and it's this. I meant the dash line should be here, so we're about on the cusp of actually probably reaching into Rice County in this next plan. So the Rice County boundary is right here at 86. So I prepared some kind of preliminary timeline and tasks associated with the plan development. And I know it's too difficult to see on this zoomed in map, but the first part of it is really just identifying the public engagement piece of it, which we've been talking about for a few months already, and then once we evaluate the public engagement and community surveys, then we start to take that and mold it into the different chapters. And I think we'll largely write the plan chapters in-house, or that's the plan at this point, partially to save money, because these are, if we were gonna hire a consultant to do that part of it, it would probably be over $100,000. There's a lot of cities going out for RFPs right now, and there's not that many consulting companies that do this work. Bolton and Menk has land use planners, WSB. There's just not that many. I'm not even familiar with others. And then simultaneously, Bolton and Menk will be working on those utility chapters, sewer, water, storm. And then our plan has to be, we have to send it out to adjacent communities for review, and they get 6 months to review it before we submit it to the Met Council. And then we also have to hold a public hearing and open house at the end when the plan is ready, to get more community feedback. And then there's this implementation chapter where we take all these chapters and data, and you wrap it up into like how we're going to implement it. Maybe we need to amend our zoning ordinance to allow 2-family dwellings, or we'll have to make changes to our ordinances too. So, just again, the implementation chapter. So, for the rest of 2026 is where I have developed a community engagement plan, do the community engagement, summarize the community engagement feedback, identify major issues and themes that are coming out of the community engagement, and then start writing those first 2 chapters. Those are kind of the goals for this year. And then all of next year, 2027, would be the remaining stuff, remaining chapters: natural environment plan, land use plan, housing plan, climate plan, transportation, parks and trails.
Would you invite the whole group of people from that plan, or the overlaid? Is that how you would get the public involvement? Or?
I don't know yet.
Oh.
Yeah, I think there's differences of opinion on getting public engagement from people that are just city residents versus city residents and township residents. So.
It's kind of revolves around the township.
Yeah,
So,
right. Yeah.
A major portion of growth
Right.
is because of the
And
township.
if you survey 50 township residents that say they don't want the city to grow, how do you, what does that mean? And we still have a responsibility to plan, regardless of if somebody doesn't want the city to grow. So,
You say there's citizens that don't want it either, I'm sure.
yeah, for sure, yeah.
Do you know the township population off the top of your head?
No, I don't. It's probably not much different than the cities, I would think.
Well, we know that growth isn't popular. We
Yeah.
know that.
Yeah.
And we still have a shortage of housing, and we still have all of these other issues that we are trying to solve for. And just to support staff here a little bit, we know that the loudest voices generally are not the most prolific voices.
Yeah. Right. So some initial, and we had a public engagement plan the last time, and I wasn't, I didn't work for the city when the public engagement happened, but I think they did individual surveys with selected community members, certain members of the Chamber of Commerce, the business community, people that represented different neighborhoods or maybe HOAs, planning commissioners, parks commissioners, city council members, church representatives, just try to get a broad cross-section and do like individual interviews, one-on-one interviews with them. And then we also had a survey monkey that had a lot of the same questions that we served up to our website. But again, you kind of don't know who's answering it or if the same person answered the survey 10 times or, so there's maybe a little balancing there.
But you have it where you just sign in with one email, and if you've got two emails, well, you sign in twice, but if you can't, you know, you have to have an email to sign in type thing.
There's workarounds around something like that.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Looks like the population of the township in 2020 with the census was 34.
Okay. And I wouldn't think they've built that many houses in Newmarket Township since the 2020 census.
I think they have.
Well, they estimated for 2026 is 3556.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
About in line like you thought with us, right? So
Say that again?
that's about in line with our population, you thought, so.
We're 5,250,
5,000,
yeah.
okay.
Yeah,
But that's, okay.
yeah, and it's about 3,500-ish,
Oh,
yeah.
I see.
Yeah, so if you guys put any thought into it, or if you know what, I don't know if you guys are doing a comp plan in your community anytime soon, but.
Well, if that was a question, we did just do ours almost 2 years ago.
Okay,
But Northfield, we weren't required to
Yeah. Yeah.
follow Met Council. We just did ours because we did ours.
yeah. Okay,
So
Did you do a survey?
we did a lot of surveys, and right now we're updating our zoning code. We're doing a 100% rewrite, and that's just shy of 200,000. It's a lot of money.
wow, yeah, that was a lot of money.
Are there questions on the survey that would be relevant to ours, or no?
You know, I'll have to look into that. I think maybe, I did appreciate all of the open houses that Elko Newmarket had at the last go-round.
Yeah, that was
Right.
like in the other room, wasn't it,
Yeah.
sometimes?
Yep. Didn't they do one at the
Oh, the other room
library
was in there.
too?
Yes.
Or is that prior?
No, there was one at the library, there was one here, and then you did a presentation, I believe, at Scott County, too. Or am I
That might have been for something else, but
Skating
then we
area.
ended up getting
that's what it's for.
mixed with COVID, so
Yeah,
Right.
a lot of our open houses were by Zoom.
yeah.
So hopefully it will,
And I was
Lot
actually impressed with how well they were attended, but maybe everybody was just bored because they were stuck at home, but I thought they were attended pretty well.
that's how you can sell it. Board at home, watch this.
Then we lowered it, yeah, right? And then we loaded, so we recorded the Zoom, we did them chapter by chapter, the open houses, and we recorded them, and then we loaded them up on our website also. It was the best we could do at the time, so we got a little bit of both.
That may be a good idea to continue too, as an option
Mm-hmm.
for people who can't attend, but they can
Yeah.
still look it up
Yeah,
online and have
I
access to it.
liked that, yep. Yeah, I've started doing some research on just community engagement related to comprehensive plans, and, it's, we gotta get going on, we gotta get it developed, and, I wanna make sure that everybody's okay with the plan, the city council. Luckily, the city of Elko New Market goes out and does a really detailed, community survey. It's not part of the comprehensive plan, it's just a community survey. They hire an outside firm called Morris Leatherman, and it's supposed to be statistically accurate. I don't know statistics, but, they cold call a certain number of households in the community, and they ask questions about the conditions of our roads and our police protection and fire protection and condition of our trails and, all kinds of questions. I mean, it's probably a 30 minute survey on the phone, and then they sum up, and we do it regularly every 3 years. It's pretty costly. But the timing is right, that we may be able to get some of our questions, the pertinent questions that could also inform the comp plan, in with the Morris Leatherman survey.
Nice.
What are your thoughts on our housing stock? Or do you think our housing is generally in good condition, or just our parks are, do you think?
People
we have
might not know
adequate-
the answers to some of those questions, but
No, if you reframe them in like an easier, more plain language, then I think you would get some answers.
I remember, wasn't there something about grocery stores or something back in
Yeah.
the day when we were trying to
Yeah. we
get one
usu-
to come and,
We usually ask, what are the top 3 businesses, or, do you think we need business growth?
and more
Do you
bars?
think we need industrial growth? What businesses, yeah. It's always grocery store, hardware store. And we didn't have a second gas station until
Yeah.
recently, but, so the city of Elko Market is eligible for a $40,000 grant to support the comprehensive plan development. The grant applications are due in November, so I'll submit that to the Met Council, and we'll get, once it's approved, we have to submit a resolution from the city council supporting the grant, a work plan, a project budget, and then it's a semi-annual progress reports, and we get half up front and then half after the plan is adopted. So it's not much to offset the cost of the plan, but it's better than nothing. And just kind of noting, community engagement in this process is really, it's consistent with our COG philosophy, community-oriented government philosophy, that, we want community involvement in our decisions, and we want public participation, and we believe it will help ensure that the 2050 plan reflects the goals and values of our residents and businesses.
Are there any requirements that need to be met for community engagement? Certain
No.
number of open houses? It's
No.
kind of a blank slate.
Yeah, that, we really don't even need to do any community engagement. That's more of our own philosophy, and it helps us identify the issues, like where are the issues, what are we doing good and what are we doing bad, and what do people want? Yeah, which is, it's a difficult, I think that, what are we doing good, what are we doing bad, and what do people want it's difficult, because you could have 98% of the community saying, we want to build a wall around the community, and we don't want anything else to happen, or we don't want any more growth. But based on our mandates from the Met Council, we still have to plan for it. We still have to plan for the populations of, whatever they were, 6,200 by 2030, 8,200 by 2040. So, So, yeah, I think I kind of touched on these, but this is in the last plan, the targeted feedback. Parks Commission, Planning Commission, City Council, local developers, business owners, chamber reps, school district, residential neighborhoods, and online survey. And then the topics were, what are the community strengths and weaknesses? What is your vision of the community? Questions related to residential land uses, commercial land uses, industrial land uses. Questions related to our transportation system, just, is it good, is it bad, what could be better? Parks and trails, public facilities like police department, fire department, public works. Public works maintenance, meaning like, do you think our lawns look nice in our public spaces? Is the snow plowing good? And then questions about the natural environment protection. So I think that will be pretty similar as I see it. I think the engagement was pretty well laid out last time. I'd like to include the township and maybe youth, although I haven't really figured out without having like a strong based school district here of like senior high kids. I mean, I know they are broken out between the two school districts, but is there a way to survey some youth that are in like a senior high school about what they would want to see in the community if they would want to stay here? Yeah. So just some early thoughts that I had. As we're kicking off the planning cycle, we have to just, the city is seeing increased interest in development and building permit activity, and that we will likely have a new interchange in 2030 to 2031, which may positively image the community and further increase growth. We might consider just a new format or modernizing our document for a new look. Evaluate that 2040 growth boundary to determine if changes should be made. Consider whether we approach this as an update or more of an overhaul or somewhere in between. I think I'm leaning to somewhere in between. Consider whether a steering committee should be established or if we use the Planning Commission as a steering committee. I know that some communities have a steering committee which may consist of business owners or, other representatives, but historically here, the Planning Commission has been the steering committee. So every plan chapter is reviewed pretty much just what the plan has been with the Planning Commission. And I think that's the council's wishes. They didn't say explicitly, but I think that's would be what they would say. We could consider a use of consultants for certain portions of the plan update. A consultant could even do the community engagement, complete third party could do the community engagement, but might boil down to cost. And then this was more for the city council. They need to consider the costs and the tax impact on the upcoming budget, because most of this work is going to be done in 2027, and we're going to start budget discussions here in the next month for budgeting for 2027. So like Tom made a comment today in a meeting, like the police department is wondering if they can hire a new police officer next year. Well, they might not be able to because we have to do a comp plan. And we just can't bear the tax impact of both at the same time. Evaluates, there's a lot of internal discussion. We've had a lot of internal discussions on transportation policy related to collector streets. We think we should do a more detailed overhaul of those utility chapters.
A lot of collectors that don't go anywhere.
What is a collector street?
A collector street is, so streets have functions, and they range from, like an interstate, the function is to move traffic at a high speed, but not to provide access to properties.
Yep.
And a residential street's function, like the street in front of your home, is a local road. Its function is purely to provide access to properties. And then there's streets in between, like local collector streets and arterial roads. So your collector street might be, can't remember what neighborhood you live in, the farm
I'm in
area?
the farm, with like
So,
Natchez.
yeah, like, Natchez would be more of a minor arterial, but even Aaron Drive, I mean, a lot of the little streets will feed to Aaron Drive, and then Aaron Drive feeds out to Natchez, and so you can see these layers of streets, and they're all serving different functions. And the collector streets, or the major collector streets in our city, we don't allow access on them, so. Like Xerxes Avenue, I don't know if you know where Xerxes is, but it goes down to Pete's Hill area. There are a few old driveways, but we would never allow a new driveway on that, because its function is to carry local traffic.
Gotcha.
But they're hard to build because the city doesn't have any money to build streets, and developers don't want to build them because they don't get any benefit out of them, because they can't access any of their lots. And a lot of times if you look at our transportation plan map, they'll be centered like on a property line between, Marty Deutsch's property and Lane Jones's property, and then who's gonna pay for it and who's gonna build it when it shows centered on a property line, and it's just implementing them is difficult. I think they're really important. If you would go up to Savage now, you can just see the grids of the different functional classification of streets.
Shakopee has a lot of good ones.
Shakopee has a lot of good ones.
Yep.
A lot of good ones, and every time I go to Shakopee, I think, how do they build these beautiful streets, and then on top of it, they're all tree lined, which really gets my goat, because our policy is we don't plant trees in the right of way. That's planners versus public works people. Planners want to plant trees along streets, and public works people don't, because that's a lot of work for public works. So.
And the potential damage.
What?
And the potential damage of the roots that caused.
Yeah, right, yeah, and the sidewalks, and everything, so, yeah,
Yeah, but we have those sidewalk issues anyways with the root systems.
yeah,
So.
yeah. So that's all I have on the comp plan, but just want you to know we'll be doing some heavy lifting here coming up.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's a great presentation.
Before we move on, are one of you the host of the meeting? I
I
can't
am.
get in, I'm stuck, it says the host has to let you in.
I am the host, but I didn't see that. Oh. You are correct.
There you are.
Can you see now?
Yep.
Are you in?
You're in.
Yeah, I don't know, there we go.
Okay.
All right, second part of general business is sexually orientated business review and analysis.
Okay. I'm going to share. Okay, here we go. This was one of the items identified both last year and this year as a goal on our annual goals that we adopt for the Planning Commission, is just to review our sexually oriented use regulations to make sure that we're in compliance with case law and statute. So there's certain uses that are protected by the First Amendment, which is the freedom of speech, and sexually oriented uses fall under that category of being protected by the First Amendment. So that could include anything from, strip clubs to adult bookstores and toy stores. The city cannot zone out adult uses. We can impose controls on where adult uses can locate, in terms of which zoning districts they can locate. And case law has established that 5% of the total land area within a city is a reasonable benchmark. In your packet, this is, I think the rest of you know this, but might be interesting for Ben. There was actually a strip club that illegally established where the end zone is. And the city had reviewed, I think it's actually, well, it was a county-wide effort, so this was a big planning deal in the early 2000s. So all the cities in Scott County, we all got together and were writing our sexually oriented use ordinances, in the city of Elko, New Market, our city of Elko and New Market adopted these ordinances, and one illegally opened in the property that's now the end zone. So the city pursued a closure of the establishment. The building owner and operator of the strip club then sued the city, alleging the city ordinance was unconstitutional. At the end of the day, the courts concluded that the city's ordinance was constitutional, and the case was dismissed. I think it might have went to the Supreme Court, but I can't remember exactly. But then they didn't help themselves during that process, and they kept going and were serving alcohol also, which is not permitted. So it was like a double negative there. And then we reviewed this again in 2019. Was the last time we just did a comprehensive review to see if we were generally in compliance with state statute, and we and the city attorney concluded that our ordinance was defensible. So our current ordinance states that sexually oriented businesses are not allowed within 200 feet of residential zoning districts, schools, churches, daycares, parks, or other sexually oriented businesses. They're also not allowed in any residential zoning district. They're not allowed in the B1 and B2 zoning district, which would be your downtown or Main Street, down in the core downtown of New Market, in the core downtown of Elko. And they're not allowed in special zoning districts, the urban reserve, institutional, floodplain, or certain PUD districts. They are allowed under our zoning ordinance in B4, B5, B6, B7, I1, and I2. So those are going to be commercial zoning districts along County Road 2 that are a little further towards the interstate. And then the I1 and I2 are on the other side of the interstate in the industrial park, or in a PUD if they have those base underlying zoning districts. So what the question we're asking ourselves is, where can they locate, and what percentage of land area in the city can they locate in, and is that percentage defensible? So I did just a GIS analysis to buffer the school, to buffer the church facility in town, to buffer any currently licensed daycare facilities, to buffer, what is this? This is, can't read it. Parks. Whoops. 200-foot buffer from any residential zoning district is shown on this map. Zoning districts where they're just simply not allowed is shown on this map. This is our overall zoning map, but when I take and merge all those layers together where they're not allowed, the blue highlighted parcels or turquoise parcels are where they would be allowed today under today's zoning.
You had Quick Trip circled.
Yep.
Yeah.
And just doing an analysis on the acres. So of the 2,208 acres that are currently inside the city limits, 126 acres, or 6.3%, are available for sexually oriented uses. And I reviewed that with the city attorney today, and basically our recommendation is that we leave the ordinance as it is, that this is defensible and adequate. But as the city continues to annex more land towards the, along that commercial corridor, if we saw that percentage go up to 10%, maybe then you'd want to say they're not allowed in the B4 district anymore. You might want to restrict it further if that's your intent. Does that make sense? Okay. So I think we just have to monitor our annexations and what the zoning is in those annexed areas, or rezonings as well in this existing city. So that's all I have.
Okay, thank you. And then data center update?
At the last city council meeting, we did kind of reconsider our position on data centers and recommended to the city council that moratorium be implemented on the establishment of data centers. So the moratorium is in place for 1 year or until we get an ordinance established. The expectation from the council is that we don't drag it out as long as we can, that we actually study the matter. We have to be studying the issue. And as soon as we get something adopted that we feel will protect the city or residents around the city and landowners, then the moratorium would be lifted. And we have asked a consulting firm, WSB, to help us with this research, and just based on their workload, and some other things that have also asked them to take on. It's probably going to be towards the end of the summer.
Sure.
Originally, we thought this isn't a big concern because most data centers use a lot of water. But if there's a data center that is a new technology that doesn't use a lot of water, that they're recycling their water somehow. One thing that we still don't have a real good understanding on is just the noise that could be associated, or the constant humming. That's kind of what some of the preliminary research is indicating, that there's just like a continual noise. So how is that mitigated, and is it a concern? There aren't a lot of comprehensive studies out there, so we're just want to keep you updated. There's currently a moratorium.
Thank you. Awesome, all right.
Bit of water tower down in, I think it was Tennessee or something, where it was a Google, they called it the Google Tower. It was a big 1.5 million gallon hydro pillar next to, it must have been a data
center.
center or something, because they had all these cooling towers on top of the roof and whatever.
Yeah.
It was like, and you couldn't, I use a lot of street views, Google
Yeah,
Street Views.
For sure.
And they couldn't do it because there was a gated, a guard shack. You couldn't,
Oh, yeah.
they didn't drive down the road to look at the tower or go
Yeah.
show the data center. It was just a Google image of the data center, but,
Okay.
so they
Highly secured.
excluded, themselves out of the
Yeah.
street view, so.
Google has the power.
That was a huge, facility. I don't know, was there offices too? I have no idea, but,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
It's the hot topic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that's on data centers. Don't have a lot of, I'll have more information for you at the next meeting regarding legislative updates. One update is that Representative John Kosnick was able to secure $1.2 million in funding in the tax bill that will help us start the design on the interchange. Interchange is programmed currently to be reconstructed in 2030. And we have $7 million secured from a grant that the city applied for, but we have a lot of money that we still need to find to make it happen. So we're applying for another big grant. Scott County is heading that one. It's called the Regional Solicitation. And I think the max is 10 million on that. And then we'll just continue to advocate through MnDOT to have them added into their transportation improvement plan, or other grant funds, so. But we wanted to need to get started right away on some preliminary design work, some environmental documents, and kind of identifying any right-of-way acquisition that we might need to pick up, so. Thank Kosnick if you ever have the opportunity for doing that. He fought hard for that. And then there is some new legislation regarding homeowners associations, and Andrea's office, our city attorney's office will be putting out a publication of any laws that were passed that pertain to zoning, and I hope to have that in your packet next time. But one particular related to HOAs is cities can't require a developer to have a HOA if they don't, if they want to have one on their own accord for some reason, but the city can't mandate that an HOA is established, so.
Do we require that now? I don't think so.
No, I mean, if there's a private street, there needs to be an HOA, and then Andrea has required that those documents be submitted to her for review. And I don't know if maybe that's even overreach now,
That
I'm
was
not
for
sure.
townhouses, that they have common roofs and
Yeah,
walls, you know, I mean, that's what I thought it was for too, right? Siding and roofs?
yep, in the attached townhouses, they almost always have them, but that's because they have to have them, not because the city mandates. But I think there are some cities that maybe overstep.
How prevalent are they in town? Because I don't have one, and, I mean, that was one of the selling points for me, was
Yeah.
that we don't have a HOA. I mean, are they common with some of the newer developments popping up?
Mostly not, mostly not.
Well, I can say though that 80% of new construction right now in Minnesota, they do have an HOA of some kind, but we are an anomaly because we prefer single-family homes.
Yeah. This development, Parkway Meadows, which is under construction north of City Hall, they do have an HOA there on their own, because some of their products are like a villa where the homeowners don't do their own mowing, and, I mean, they still own their full own lot, but they don't do their snow removal or
Shared
mowing.
services.
Yeah. Not the whole development, just portions of it, just certain housing products. And we did receive the application for final plat approval of the remaining portion of that development. So that development is called Parkway Meadows. And I think they platted 37 lots, and I think there's like 42 more. So they applied for final plat approval. They are waiting to see how lot sales go over this next month before they decide if they're going to build it this fall or this summer.
Okay.
The remaining streets. And then we're working on the Eagle View Meadows, which is Joe Sullivan's 80 acres. So we got that through preliminary plat and zoning approval. And Joe Sullivan is under contract now with Lennar. And Lennar has engaged an engineering firm to prepare a final plat application. I'm not sure how it will be phased yet, or how many lots will be in the initial phase.
So who's right here right now? Who's behind here? The city hall? Who's the developer?
MI Homes,
And who's out there right now by the school?
D.R. Horton.
Yeah, okay, so it'll be a third, okay.
Yep. Well, Lennar is kind of throughout
Yeah,
Boulder Heights, but yeah, so it's MI Homes. I think they're the 13th largest home builder in the United States. And then D.R. Horton and Lennar.
okay.
I think Lennar is number 1, and D.R. Horton is maybe number 2 or 3.
Cause yeah, I think I've seen them over in like Burnsville or some of those
Yeah.
cities. I mean,
Yeah,
not so much here, but yeah.
yeah,
Cause they just take a whole development and do it, right? Yeah.
they do.
I see you get a lot of the same houses. That's why I built my own up there, because I didn't
Yeah.
want to be like any of the neighbors, you know, so.
Yeah,
They all look the
I
same.
chose a builder from over here to build my house over here. you know,
yeah.
yeah.
That's probably when the developments were open. Did you buy your lot from Bart, or, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the good old days. Bernie Mahold passed away yesterday. He was a developer that developed the farm, him and his business partner. So, that was sad.
Was his family taken over?
What's that?
Is his family taken over, or did he sell everything?
They sold most of, there was another 40-acre, two 40-acre pieces that they had, and they sold those to the
South,
DeGrosse
right?
family, yeah.
Because that was always gonna be a big park.
Yeah, they wanted a family legacy park, down there, and it just never came to fruition,
Too bad.
yeah. Does anybody have any questions?
I don't have anything else.
I'm good.
Anyone want to make a motion to
Make a
adjourn?
motion.
Anyone want a second?
Sure, I'll motion. Is there a
All right.
second?
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, meeting adjourned at 8:21 PM.